So I think one of the key issues with climate change and water is how you manage variability. And one of the things people think of immediately is usually storage, like large dams, but also other physical structures, different ways to store water. But you can also think about it in indirect ways. How do farmers get the revenue how can they ensure a revenue supply when there isn't water? So it could be insurance, it could be different forms of food security. One of the main issues with water and climate change is that variability is likely to increase, and farmers are less sure when the water is going to come, and when it does come, it might be more intense than it came before. So a key issue is how to store the water and how to capture the water, or how to make sure that there are mechanisms in place so that when the water is not there, the farmers are okay. People often think of large dams as the main way to store water, but there are many other options that are possible as well. There are small tank systems in South Asia, for example, especially Sri Lanka and southern India, in which farmers work together to make, instead of one large dam, they make a number of small storage tanks. Those storage tanks allow the farmers to capture water throughout the system, which slows the flow during flood peaks, so there's less erosion as well. It recharges the groundwater by holding the water, and the water can sink into the ground, and then the farmers can pump it later. And often the way that the management system is structured, the farmers own land throughout the system, and so when one part doesn't have water, it's not a total collapse for one farmer, the burden is shared across the farmers. Yeah, so also we often think first, if you're going to manage water variability, you should be doing something with water. But in fact, you can help farmers by focusing on something outside the water sector. So if there's crop insurance or if there's income insurance, looking at options so that when there is variability problems, farmers aren't going to go bankrupt or aren't going to become impoverished because there's something else possible. It could also be food storage, or it could be food supply systems that go beyond the farm level. Often when people are trying to save water, we look at putting in more efficient irrigation systems. And what people are usually thinking about is saving the water that was evaporating into the air, and instead putting on just the amount that the plants need. So with drip irrigation is a common improved technology that people talk about for water savings. But what they often don't realize is that a lot of the excess water that was applied actually isn't lost. It's not evaporated. Oftentimes it goes into the groundwater system, and it can be pumped up again by the same farmer or another farmer. And one of the problems with not understanding how the water works is that sometimes when high efficiency irrigation is added, it allows the first farmers to control the water better, but it reduces the amount of groundwater recharge there is. That means unless the farmers change behavior, they may be pumping out extra water from the system. The groundwater tables may actually go down. And also when you're making the water more efficient, that increases the incentive for the farmers to use it, so they may be wanting to use even more water than before. So in some aspects, in some perspectives, it might make the water use more efficient, but if you don't look at the whole system and how farmers respond, you might end up with both water outcomes and equity outcomes that you weren't expecting. Yeah, so the issue is what scale you're thinking about when you're thinking about water saving. Some of these technologies reduce the amount of water that the individual farmer needs to put on the field, but they may expand their fields and actually use more water because they now have it available. The water that they were wasting before was recharging the groundwater or going back into the streams, and farmers downstream were sometimes using it, or ecosystems were using it. So if you don't look at the whole system and how the feedback loops work through it, you might miss what's actually happening and come up with a technology or come up with a policy that results in outcomes that you weren't hoping for.